They didn't warn you. They just did it. One day you woke up and realized you weren't being included in certain conversations anymore. People in your circle were meeting without you. Jokes were being told around you, not to you. Your ideas started coming out of other people's mouths with other people's names attached. You felt it. That slow, quiet exile. That's the moment you learn the first law of power. No one is too busy. They're just reallocating loyalty away from you. Let me ask you something. When that happened, did you get louder? Or did you get sharper? Because most people do the weak thing. They react. They start clarifying, defending, chasing. I don't know why you're acting like this. What did I do? Can we talk? That's emotional exposure. That's you giving the weapon to the person who's already shown you they'll use it. Machiavelli would call that a strategic error. You made yourself readable, and the one who is readable can be controlled. Here's what you missed. They were never trying to destroy you directly. They were trying to move you into emotional chaos, because a destabilized mind is easy to contain. You think they're cold. They're just efficient. They're removing your access to influence while keeping access to your reactions. That is psychological warfare. That is modern politics. That is corporate friendship. In every environment, work, family, love, there is always someone quietly running position. You thought everyone was just being themselves. No. Someone is shaping perception. Someone is managing the room. Someone is deciding who is difficult, who is unreliable, who is dramatic, and who is essential. If you aren't controlling that story, someone else already is. Control the narrative or live inside someone else's version of you. That's why they don't want you focused. They want you scrolling, reacting, begging for meaning. Because the man who learns to control his focus becomes dangerous. Attention is power. Attention is currency. Attention is loyalty. And once you learn to direct your own attention instead of giving it away emotionally, you stop playing defense. Let me tell you a story. A guy got quietly pushed out of his own project by his friend. Meetings without him, updates without him. By the time he realized, the board already believed he was distracted, unstable, not aligned. You know how the smear started? Not facts, not proof, just tone. He's been off lately. That's all it takes. Soft language, deadly effect. Now listen to me very closely. Reality doesn't matter. Perception does. Machiavelli understood that the appearance of stability is more valuable than actually being stable, because people follow what they feel safe attaching to. They would rather follow something that looks calm than something that is actually true. So here's the dilemma. When someone moves against you, do you correct them to protect your innocence? Or do you go silent to protect your power? What would you do? Because this is where the break begins. You are no longer allowed to be naive. The first step is simple, and it's not pretty. You stop explaining yourself. If they misunderstand you, let them. If they villainize you, let them. If they rewrite what happened, let them. You are exiting the argument and entering the strategy. This is where you start building the weapon, yourself. Are you willing to be seen as cold in exchange for becoming untouchable? Let's talk about isolation. Not loneliness, not pouting, not running away. Isolation as a weapon. You think retreat means weakness because someone taught you that constant access equals love. That's how they keep you tame. Constant availability is how they keep you compliant. Here's the correction. Strategic isolation is not retreat. It's regeneration. You pull away to remove corruption from your thinking. You disappear to regain altitude. You starve the noise until you can actually hear your own instincts again. This is where emotional intelligence stops being soft and becomes lethal. Everyone tells you, be vulnerable, open up, talk it out. No. That advice is for civilians. You are not a civilian anymore. You are in a psychological battleground where information is traded as leverage. Your emotional transparency is someone else's bargaining chip. Machiavelli said it plainly. People will love you while it benefits them, but they will fear losing access to you forever. If you must choose, choose fear, but not hatred. You don't yell, You don't humiliate. You just close the door and don't reopen it. Quietly, cleanly, final. Ask yourself this: who right now believes they can get away with disrespecting you and still keep access to you? Write their names mentally. That is the list of people you've trained incorrectly. Let me show you how this works in real life. There's a woman, loyal, always answering at 2 a.m., the talk to me, I'll listen friend, the therapist of the group. She thinks her kindness is building security. It's not. It's building dependence. They come to her for comfort, then exclude her from decisions. She's useful, not respected. Then 1 month she stops being available, doesn't announce it, doesn't post "I'm protecting my peace" like a motivational quote clown. She just stops replying instantly. She answers when she decides. She speaks less in the group chat. She gives no explanations, no drama, no guilt speeches. You know what happened next? The same people who took her for granted started texting, "Are you mad at me? Why don't I have control over you anymore?" That is fear without hatred. That is leverage. Here's what's hard. She felt guilty. You will too, because you've been trained to believe access is love and withholding access is cruelty. But listen carefully. Selective access is not cruelty. It's structure. It's teaching people your value instead of begging them to see it. What would you do in her place? Would you restore comfort to keep them calm? Or would you let their anxiety teach them what your presence is actually worth? Calculated silence is not passive. It's an active strike. Your distance forces them to confront how replaceable or irreplaceable you are. Another rule: you cannot be mysterious and constantly available at the same time. Pick one. From this point forward, your time is not a public resource. Your attention is not an open faucet. Your emotional responses are not free entertainment. Your life is now on a need-to-know basis. Who still has access to you that hasn't earned it in months? Now we get into reputation, the part they never taught you, because if you knew this too early, you'd stop being controllable. Understand this: reputation is not vanity. Reputation is armor. It shields you when you're not in the room. It speaks for you when you cannot. It preloads how people experience you before you even open your mouth. And if you don't build it on purpose, someone else will build it for you and weaponize it against you. In every room, someone is narrating you. She's emotional. He's unstable. You know how he is. They plant seeds that turn into assumptions, and those assumptions turn into how people treat you. That's why you feel like you're walking into rooms where the mood is already hostile, because the story was already told before you arrived. Here's where we shift. From now on, you stop being harmless. You've been told your whole life to be non-threatening, agreeable, flexible, easy to be around. That sounds nice, but here's the truth. Harmless is forgettable. Harmless is disposable. Harmless is easy to replace. You are not going to aim for harmless anymore. You are going to aim for disciplined. Disciplined is unforgettable. Disciplined walks into a room and people sit up straighter without knowing why. Disciplined exits a conversation and the silence feels expensive. Disciplined doesn't need to argue. It just enforces calmly. Ask yourself this, and don't lie. Who actually loses something real if they lose you? If the answer is no one, that is not an insult. That is your assignment. Here's the dilemma. Are you willing to become someone whose absence is felt like structural damage? Because that requires edge. That requires the possibility of consequence. That requires you to stop announcing forgiveness in advance. Selective mercy. Learn that phrase. Mercy is powerful only when you're capable of damage. If you can't withdraw access, your forgiveness is just proof you have no boundaries. That is not mercy. That is surrender, dressed as kindness. Now let's talk about modern warfare. Today they don't always try to ruin you in public. That's messy. That's traceable. They do it quietly. Whisper distance, whisper doubt, whisper concern. They assassinate impressions. It's elegant. It's deniable. So you respond in kind. You stop bleeding your plans out loud before they're built. You stop sharing your pain with people who secretly enjoy it. You stop updating spectators on your recovery arc like it's a TV show they get to comment on. From this moment on, results speak. Silence protects. Precision dictates. You are building a version of you that can walk into any environment and not need approval, not need applause, not need clarity from anyone but yourself. That is terrifying to people who feed on control. And here is where the moral conflict sharpens. Can you handle being called arrogant, cold, selfish, changed, different, not like before, and not defend yourself? What would you do if keeping your soul required letting go of being liked? This is where it flips. You spent years chasing peace from people who were actively feeding on your instability. You begged for closure from people who benefited from keeping you uncertain. You tried to heal relationships that were only alive because you kept bleeding into them. Now, you stop. Listen very carefully. You do not need revenge. You do not need them to admit they were wrong. You do not need to prove that you were the good one. You only need one thing, to become untouchable. Machiavelli's darkest truth is this: power is not about striking first. Power is about reaching a position where you cannot be struck. You don't win by screaming louder. You win by becoming structurally unattackable. How? Focus, distance, control of access, emotional non-reactivity, predictable routine, ruthless allocation of energy. Let me make it cinematic for you. There's a man who used to be the emotional puppet of his ex. She could destabilize him with one message. She knew exactly which memory to bring up to make him spiral. He'd lose sleep, beg to talk, spiral for days. She loved that control. It wasn't love. It was leverage. Then something changed. He didn't argue. He didn't block her dramatically. He didn't send a manifesto. He did something colder. He turned his life into structure. Gym at the same time. Work blocks on the calendar. Phone on Do Not Disturb during build hours. Sleep protected. Money tracked. Diet locked. He built rituals so tight that chaos couldn't enter unless he allowed it. And when she tried the old pattern, "Hey, stranger, can we talk?" He didn't even feel the spike. Not because he didn't care, because he was already occupied, because his nervous system had found a stronger God than her attention, his mission. That's what I mean by unattackable. You're not numb, you're not dead inside, you're just governed. When you get here, people think you've become heartless. You haven't. You've become sovereign. You're no longer reacting to stimulus. You're selecting it. This is the revelation. You used to beg for peace. Now, you are the storm. You don't enter rooms hoping to be included. You enter rooms like a variable they have to plan around. You don't ask, "Do you still want me?" You ask yourself, "Does this align with my long-term position?" You don't explain the line anymore. You enforce the line. Calmly, silently, finally. They can't bait you. They can't study you. They can't predict you. And that terrifies them more than any insult you could ever throw. Because power doesn't always announce, "I'm in control now." Sometimes it just replaces the air and lets everyone suffocate on the difference. So here's the question I'm putting in your hands. Are you ready to become the version of yourself who doesn't need to be understood in order to become the version of yourself who cannot be manipulated? What would you do with that kind of freedom? Now breathe. This is not about becoming cruel. This is about becoming sovereign. Sovereignty means this: your mind is a fortress. Your time is guarded. Your presence is rare. Your emotions are chosen, not harvested. Your attention is directed, not stolen. This is the final form. You stop negotiating your standards. You don't announce boundaries. You embody them. You don't audition for roles in other people's stories. You write your own and cast accordingly. This is where you begin operating like a strategist, not a survivor. Rule 1. Your focus is sacred. You do not feed it to chaos. You spend it on skill, body, income, position. You invest in what compounds. Rule 2. Your silence is active. You do not explain decisions to people who benefit from keeping you uncertain. You let absence educate them. Rule 3. Your routine is not motivation. Your routine is governance. You do what is required whether you feel like it or not. Feeling is not the commander anymore. Discipline is. Rule 4. You practice selective mercy. You forgive without reopening access. You can release resentment without reinstalling the person who caused it. You don't burn everything down. You just reroute the power lines so they no longer run through people who short-circuit you. Rule 5. You control appearance. Do not misunderstand this. This is not fakery. This is presentation. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. People follow what they perceive to be stable, inevitable, dangerous to betray. Present yourself that way, composed, precise, difficult to shake, even when you are still rebuilding inside. This is not lying. This is self-protection against people who exploit visible weakness. Because here is the truth that will either free you or expose you. Nobody is coming to make you emotionally safe. You are either going to become your own handler or you are going to keep getting handled. From this point forward, you are no longer nice by default. You are respectful by intention. You are not endlessly available. You are selectively reachable. You are not desperate to be liked. You are calibrated to be valued. Ask yourself, who are you when you stop begging to be chosen? Who are you when you stop proving you're good? Who are you when you stop narrating your pain for an audience that claps for the performance, but vanishes during the cleanup? Here's who you are. You are the person whose presence changes the emotional temperature of the room. You are the person whose silence carries weight. You are the person whose distance hurts. You are the person whose standards create gravity. That is respect. That is safety. That is power that doesn't have to scream. If you felt yourself in this, if you felt exposed, called out, or suddenly awake, good. That means you're not gone yet. That means you're still in here. Now I'll ask you directly, are you done being harvestable? Because this is where we choose. If this hits a truth you've been avoiding, subscribe. Here we trade illusions for strategy.